Hello and welcome back to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro. I'm Dustin. We are looking at SoFi once again, and welcome back. It has been a while if you check the channel. We're going to be looking at SoFi. One of the most popular videos that got me going, at least with some of my subscribers to begin with, was around SoFi. That's because we were looking at it here in the summertime. Obviously, July 31st was a big day at $11.45. We are not looking at as big of a day here on Halloween of 2023. Ooh, spooky season is ahead, especially if we look at SoFi, because today it was up 8.79%. Over 5 days, it's been up 2.3%. And it is down just shy of 10% over 15 days, and then up over 3.5% over 1 month. It's just interesting the way that this is all set up. If we go ahead, I'm going to hide this for a second. If we go ahead and think about where SoFi is relative to where it's been, SoFi's been in better places. It's not really good, and the reason I say that is because you look here, the price has been in with that blue background with the black lettering. That means it's been 2 standard deviations, and on one day it was 3 standard deviations below its 23-day moving average. You've seen incredibly high volume over the past few days here, over 125 million shares traded just yesterday. That was obviously before we had, I'm assuming, some sort of like earnings event where now we're up, it looks like 2.5% over 1 week, but nearly 9% over 1 day. If we look at what we see here in SoFi, though, I do find it very curious because if we think about where we've come from, do we expect that we're going to make it all the way back up to even 10? Like, do you really? Do you think you're going to make it back up to 8? The place we're in right now with SoFi would suggest that this is something to sell into. You have a go short on the short term, intermediate term, and longer term. We look at the trend indicator here. We are bearish still. We do see some bullishness will potentially show up tomorrow in the short term, bearish in the intermediate term, and we are bearish in the longer term. We would be very curious to see if the bullishness would confirm 2 days in a row. So it would have to show up tomorrow as well as then Wednesday of this. So Wednesday and then Thursday. So the 1st and 2nd of the month of November. Not convinced that's going to happen. If we look here at the rolling sentiment, we can see we have a falling bear. Actually, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I think this is maybe a little too far out. If we can see that we have a falling bear, we have essentially come off of a rising bull very recently. We are around that 50% level on the Ultrafast sentiment indicator. Things don't look fantastic. If we go ahead and look at the actual charts, this is the weekly. This is the daily. Nothing really looks great at the moment. If we look at the overall daily sentiment, again, we are falling. We are somewhere around the 50% level, but we've essentially been staying below it. We've been falling here since around the 12th of October. Maybe you could say that what we've seen over the past day, but we need to sustain it, is something that is kind of showing some bullishness. But again, even though we saw a great day, we're only at 52.9% on the last day of the month. If we look where this is relative, again, this isn't going to be all the way through because the data doesn't fill all of it. But if we look here, so this is last week, you're at 62%. You're 62%, and it looks like you are probably kind of flatlining, and you're probably going to start coming down because 60 to 62%, 65, somewhere in there that you've seen in SoFi, that's probably the peak, and that's on the weekly. So this is probably going to roll over on the weekly as well. If you look at the volumes continue to actually rise as the price has been falling very recently. That's the concern. You saw the gigantic day here on the 125 million shares traded. That was a down day. I'm assuming this day, the 31st, that was not a down day. That was an up day, obviously, because that was back here. But that was a signal that you were essentially going to see waning volume and waning demand after that. So while we've seen another big day, obviously nowhere near, this thing was over 200 million shares, but it doesn't necessarily bode well for the future here. If we look at the volatility, we can see volatility is rising. That's good to see. Volatility rising while the correlation is rising, that is actually quite good to see. What you can tell here, especially because you can notice that normally it would have these kind of like how a hill would work, where it would start at the bottom, kind of rise up and fall back down. What we're seeing here is that it's risen up, it's starting to fall back down, and then it rose up again. The way that those bars look, because of the spacing between the individual days, what that tells me is that the price is actually driving the derivative, which means that the catalyst that we saw was in the market. It wasn't necessarily indicative of the character of how SoFi is trading. So that leads me to believe that I would want to fade this move even more. And that's just because I'm reading here how the volatility is set up based on this correlation down here. The correlation is the correlation of the price and the volatility. So that would lead me to believe that as the correlation and the price are rising higher and the volatility is now breaking back out, that it's because the price is moving, not because the volatility wanted to. The volatility actually wants to roll over. And if the volatility rolls over while you have correlation that's high, you're actually going to see price fall. Now, if we look at the trade range here, this is going to be based a lot off of the volatility range, essentially how wide or how narrow it is. Right now, we can look, we're at $9.03 at the top of the range. We are at the bottom here at $6.35. Unfortunately or fortunately, we got very close to the bottom of the range. On the 25th, the bottom of the range was $6.80. We got to $6.90. So that lets you know that there is some sort of magnet right now that is not to the top of the range. At least it hasn't been since the middle of September. The highs here in October were nothing to believe. So we'd say that maybe we get up to like 850. You get to like 850, you're probably going to peter out there. I doubt you hit 9, but I definitely have a feeling you're going to hit 630. But tell me what you think in the comments below. Are you long? Are you short? Do you like it? Do you love it? Is this even a good review? And before you go, subscribe to the New High newsletter. We give you 25 stocks to your inbox every single Sunday. And it's not been that many as of recently because the market's turned down. But we explain to you in the newsletter why the market's turned down. We show you how you can understand the market. We show you exactly what's happening. Subscribe. It's a great thing to get your trading week started. I'll talk to you.